If you think you're stuck in your current home because you need to sell before you buy, wrong. I'm going to show you exactly how Boston homeowners are using their equity to move up without getting stuck in limbo or losing out on their dream home. What most people don't realize is that their home equity isn't just sitting there. It can actually be leveraged to fund their next move. But without the right plan, that equity stays locked up, and so do your options. In a fast-moving market like Boston, if you wait to sell before you buy, you're risking losing out on the right home, or worse, you're gonna settle because you're under pressure, you might overpay, or walk away with less than you should have from the sale of your current home. I'm Kimberlee Meserve, and I've been an agent for a decade now, and I've helped hundreds of Boston area homeowners navigate the complex sell and buy move, especially in a high stakes market like we have in the greater Boston area, so that you can unlock your equity and upgrade without the stress or financial missteps. Let's bust a few myths real quick. The first one is that you have to sell your current home before you can buy the next one. This is false. There are tools that let you access your equity before you sell. Myth number 2, buying before you sell is risky. Honestly, it's only risky if you don't have a plan. With the right financing and strategy, it can be the most stable way to make this kind of move. Myth number 3 is that you have to qualify for 2 mortgages at the same time. And the answer to that is not always. Some options allow you to leverage that equity without taking on the double debt long term. So let's get into the real options. These are the 3 most effective ways that my clients are unlocking their equity and able to make that move with confidence. So option number 1 is to use something like a HELOC or a home equity loan. A HELOC, which stands for Home Equity Line of Credit, is a revolving line that you can pull from as needed. Honestly, a lot of smart homeowners just have a HELOC in place on their property in case of emergency, and you don't pay interest on it until you actually draw on the money. A home equity loan, which is a little bit different, gives you that lump sum all at once. And these are great options if you have strong credit and income, maybe you're under the jumbo loan limits, and you want to pull cash for a down payment or to cover closing costs. What you're really doing here is you're borrowing against your current equity without needing to sell. And once you close on that new home and sell your old one, you can pay it back, often with a significant profit. So sometimes if you have that equity locked up in the current home and you don't use the full amount for the next down payment, you can actually take the profit from your sale and recast it towards your mortgage on the new home to lower the monthly payment later on. So let me break down the math on a real scenario here. Say you have $350,000 in equity. You can typically access up to 80% of that. But let's back up for a second and talk about what that equity is. So equity is simply the difference between what it's worth and what you owe. So if your house is worth $800,000 and you owe $500,000 on the home, you have $300,000 in equity. So going back to our scenario, say you have $350,000 in equity. Well, you can typically access up to 80% of that, though there are some loan programs that will allow you to access 85 to 90% of that. But in this scenario, let's stick with 80%. So that's around $280,000 that you can access through a HELOC. Current rates for HELOCs are around 7 to 8%, which does sound a little high until you realize that you're only paying interest on what you use, and it's often tax deductible. So you can have that HELOC in place, ready to go. You may not even need to use the full amount, and you're only paying interest once you actually draw on the money. So if you pull $100,000 for your down payment on the new home, you're really paying maybe like $700 a month in interest, but keep in mind it's only temporary. And here's the beauty. Once you sell your original home, you pay off that HELOC and you can actually pocket the rest of that. Meanwhile, you were able to get the house you wanted with still having strong terms and without having to necessarily waive every single contingency. The drawbacks to a HELOC or home equity loan are that it adds to your monthly debt, but temporarily. And timing around this really matters. It's something that it's important to work with a skilled agent around the strategy of when you want to put all these different things in place. So let's talk about option number 2. This would be a bridge loan. So a bridge loan is a short-term loan that's secured by your current home and used to fund the purchase of the next one. This is really ideal for clients who have a home to sell, but don't want to list it until they've secured the next home. Competitive offer situations where you want to avoid a contingency, a bridge loan is really good for that. It gets paid off when you sell your original home. So here's an example. A client that I worked with had a $1.2 million home in Brookline. They wanted to move to the suburbs. They were actually downsizing a little bit and looking at homes around $950,000. Even though they paid about 9% interest for a few months, it ended up being about $11,000 total in interest that they paid. It actually allowed them to make offers with no contingencies and be in a much stronger position, so they won their ideal home. Then it gave them the breathing room to prep and stage their original home, which we were able to net over ask because they put that work into making sure it was showcased properly. They actually had a net benefit overall of almost $70,000 because they used the right strategy. So the downside to the bridge loan is that interest rates are higher, but often it can be worth it because you may end up making more money on the sale of your original property through having that time to prep and stage it properly. Option number 3 would be a buy before you sell kind of program. This is where things get really interesting and what most people don't know is available. So we actually partner with programs that let you unlock your equity and make a competitive offer on your next home before you sell. So think of it kind of like they're fronting the funds so that you can buy with confidence, move when you're ready, and then sell your old home without pressure. These are really perfect for busy families who want to avoid a double move, people who are looking for their forever home but don't want to rush the process, and anyone who wants top dollar on the sale plus a stress-free transaction. If you're curious which of these strategies might work for you, we offer free equity planning sessions. You can find the link below in the description. So let me give you a few real examples so that this all comes together. Well, I want to talk about a couple that we actually helped move from Cambridge to Lexington. So they had about $420,000 in equity in their 2-bedroom Cambridge condo. They only had one income that they were working off of plus childcare costs. So they really thought that they were stuck for another few years until they dropped that childcare cost so that they could save more for that Lexington home. We were actually able to use $150,000 from the HELOC for their down payment. The HELOC payment was about $1,100 a month, but once they sold that condo in Cambridge about 4 months later for $950,000, they paid off that HELOC and had $350K left over to put towards their new mortgage, which they were able to recast and lower the payment on. So what this means is if you have a mortgage that you take out on a new property and maybe the payment is a little bit higher than you ideally want it to be because you want to put some of that equity from the original home towards it, but you're not unlocking it all at once, you can actually make one big payment at a time after you buy the new home and after you sell the original home. And the mortgage company will do what's called a recast, where they readjust the payment based on the new balance of the mortgage. So for these clients, the whole process was so much less stressful. They had no time living in limbo. So it was an ideal situation. I'll give you another scenario. So this was a single professional who wanted to move closer to work, but was worried about timing the market perfectly. So they had a condo in South Boston that was worth about $580,000, but they had $200,000 in equity. We were able to use a bridge loan to help them buy their new property in Newton. But the key is because the South Boston place that they owned previously was vacant before we listed it, we were able to stage the property, do a little bit of work, and thus resulted in a higher sale price. And they actually, even with the interest paid on the bridge loan, they were able to net a lot more money than if they had done this whole scenario as a contingency buy. Thinking about relocating to Boston? Well, I've got just the thing for you. My team and I have actually taken the time to create the ultimate relocation guide, which is meant to save you hours of research. And I've linked it down below, from top employers to best hospitals and a boatload of other things that you need to know before making the move. The best part is that it's 100% free. That's right, you heard me, 100% free. Just click the link in the description or the top pinned comment. Hope that helps. I can't emphasize this enough. The clients who win in this market aren't the ones who move fast. They're the ones that move smart. So it's really important to understand options. These are people that are having success because they create plans. They work with someone who knows how to time the sale and the purchase for maximum gain, both emotionally and financially. And here's what I've learned after a decade of doing this is that the people that build the most wealth in their real estate portfolio are the ones that are not necessarily lucky, they're strategic with timing. They understand that real estate is a tool, not just a place to live. Every month that you wait because you're not sure about the process, that equity is sitting idle if you want to be able to make that next move. And that really comes down to an opportunity cost. That's your family staying in a home that doesn't really fit your life anymore. And this is where real wealth starts to get built in real estate, not just from buying low and selling high, but moving with intention and plan. So if you're sitting on equity and wondering what's next, don't wait until you feel like you're ready. Planning now makes such a big difference so that when the right home shows up, you're ready to move with clarity and not rushing and having a chaotic process. The families that I work with that are the happiest aren't the ones that waited for perfect market conditions. They're the ones that created the condition that they needed to make their move. If you found value in this video, click here to watch the next one. It's all about timing the Boston market. I'll see you over there.